to you all. Molweni bethuna, sanibonani, dumelang batho, hello mense, lochani, apsheni, Welcome back to Talk with Thandi, HIV AIDS. If this is your first time watching, welcome. My name is Thandi. Today, I will cover the following topics. What is HIV AIDS? How it infects the body. The conditions necessary for HIV transmission. What is the viral load and what are CD4 cells? The importance of CD4 cells and the viral load. The stages of HIV infection, the symptoms of HIV, as well as the facts and the myths of how HIV is transmitted. The connection between the CD4 cells and the viral load. Since HIV is still a global public health issue, I will look at the statistics globally, which shows where the biggest concentration of HIV is. I will also look at how far we have come in terms of reducing the mortality rate. What is HIV? HIV stands for Human Immunodeficiency Virus. Once a person is infected, the blood, the semen, vaginal secretions, and breast milk will always be potentially infectious. The word immunodeficiency, it means the decreased ability of the body to fight infection. The facts about HIV. HIV attacks the white blood cells of the immune system. It is a lifelong infection. This means once you have HIV, you will have it for life. Currently, there is no cure for HIV. However, researchers and scientists are working very hard to find the cure. If HIV is left untreated, it can lead to AIDS. What is AIDS? AIDS stands for Acquired Immunodeficiency Syndrome. It occurs when T4 or CD4 cells fall to a very low level and opportunistic diseases occur. Facts about AIDS. It is the most advanced stage of HIV infection. It is a set of diseases. It results from years of damage of the immune system from HIV infection. How does HIV infect the body? As shown in the diagram, HIV, which is in pink color, it enters the bloodstream. It attacks and destroys the T helper lymphocytes or the T cells. These are the white blood cells which are essential to the functioning of the immune system. By destroying the T cells, it damages their ability to signal for antibody production. HIV is then able to reproduce itself without being killed. It injects its own DNA into the T4 cells and makes copies of itself. As time passes, the number of HIV copies keep increasing whilst the number of T4 cells keep decreasing. So does the ability of the immune system to defend the body. In the diagram, we can see the number of HIV copies, they are increasing, and the T4 cells, they are being destroyed. This results in an HIV-infected person developing frequent infections. The transmission of HIV needs three conditions. Number one, an HIV source. Secondly, sufficient dose of virus. Thirdly, access to the bloodstream. What is an HIV source? Anyone who's living with HIV is potentially a source of HIV infection. What is a sufficient dose of virus? This is the amount and the concentration of HIV in the body necessary for HIV to occur. This happens primarily through infected blood, the semen, the vaginal secretion, the anal mucus, and the breast milk. The higher the viral load, the more infectious the virus is. What is a viral load? It is the predictor of the infectious level of a person living with HIV. It shows how much HIV is present in the bloodstream. There's a connection between higher viral load in the blood and the increased transmissibility of HIV. CD4 cells play a crucial role against HIV infection. What are CD4 cells? These are white blood cells which are essential for the functioning of the immune system. They regulate the immune system in the event of attack from diseases, viruses, and bacteria. They show how much HIV is in the blood. The normal range of CD4 count is between 500 to 1000 copies. The importance of CD4 cells. They defend the immune system. When attacked by the virus, the CD4 cells send signals to other cells to produce helpful antibodies. Antibodies are produced to help get rid of foreign invaders which are causing diseases. Antibodies are proteins which are made by the immune system in response to HIV infection. Note that when CD4 cells are attacked, the immune system cannot produce antibodies. This results in the weakened immune system. The connection between CD4 count and viral load. When your CD4 count is very high, for instance, about 1,500 copies, it means you have less viral load, and this results in less transmissibility of HIV. On the other hand, when you have low CD4 count, for instance, less than 200 copies, it means you have more viral load, which translates to increased transmissibility of HIV. The gold standard is to have high CD4 count and undetectable viral load. This is U is equals to U, which means undetectable equals to untransmittable. I will elaborate more on the topic of U is equals to U in our next sessions. Advanced HIV disease, AHD. This is when CD4 cell count is below 200. It reveals the body's inability to create antibodies and fight infection. It results to greater risk for opportunistic infections. So it is when the CD4 cell count is 200 copies. It's having an AIDS-defining illness. It is likely to occur to those who have not been tested. It is also likely to occur to those who have been diagnosed late. It also occurs to those who have never started taking ARVs and those who have stopped taking ARVs. This brings us to the stages of HIV infection. The first stage is the acute HIV infection. This stage starts as early as 2 to 4 weeks after contracting HIV. During this stage, there's lots of HIV in the body. The person develops many symptoms, which are signs that the immune system is putting up a fight against the virus. The symptoms of acute HIV infection. These are signs that the immune system is putting a fight against the virus. Some of the symptoms, it's sore throat, night sweats, mouth ulcers, diarrhea, plus headaches, chills, skin rash, muscle aches, fever, swollen lymph nodes, exhaustion. Some people may develop no symptoms at all, that is, they are asymptomatic, and they are not aware that they have been infected by HIV. The second stage of HIV infection is called the chronic HIV infection. The CD4 cells, they keep on declining. HIV continues to reproduce. Some people still have no symptoms at all, but for some, the infection progresses very fast. The third stage is AIDS. This is a severe stage. The virus is very active and the number of T4 cells, they drastically drop. The immune system is badly damaged. A person develops opportunistic infections and there's severe weight loss. We know that during the 1980s, the 90s and the early 2000s, an HIV positive diagnosis was like a death sentence. However, with the introduction of ART, that is the antiretroviral treatment, as well as the rollout of ARVs, HIV is now as manageable as a diagnosis of high blood pressure. The next slide shows us the symptoms timeline. Between day 3 to day 7, a person starts developing fever. Between day 7 to day 14, it's fever plus fatigue, muscle aches, joint pain, skin rash, headache, sore throat, and chills. Between day 14 to 21 is what I've mentioned. In addition, you have mouth sores, lymph enlargements, night sweats, and diarrhea. And then from day 29 onward, lymph nodes can stay enlarged, but other symptoms, they get resolved. It is therefore very important that if you develop one of these symptoms, you go and test, as testing late might make it difficult to control and to manage HIV. Facts about how HIV is transmitted. HIV can be transmitted during pregnancy and childbirth. It can also be transmitted during breastfeeding. This is called mother-to-child transmission, or MTCT, or perinatal HIV transmission. Please note that the infection only happens if the mother has a high viral load. However, if the mothers are aware of their HIV infection and are treated along with their babies, the chances of the baby getting HIV are less than 2%. The PMTCT, Prevention of Mother-to-Child Transmission, has made the HIV-free generation possible. That is a situation where a mother who's living with HIV giving birth to an infant who's HIV negative. Please note that South Africa has made big strides in reducing mother-to-child transmission from 23% in 2003 to 0.7% in 2019. That is from the Southern African Journal of HIV Medicine 2020. HIV can also be transmitted through unprotected sexual intercourse with an infected person, that is if you don't use the condom. It also can be transmitted through body fluids exchange. HIV can also be transmitted through accidental injuries like accidental needle stick injuries and biting. Biting poses very little risk. The possibility only exists if the person who's biting and the person who's bitten have an exchange of blood, for instance, through bleeding gums or open sores in the mouth. HIV can also be transmitted through sharing needles and sharing toothbrushes and razors. This happens in rare cases if the infected blood was deposited on the toothbrush or the razor of the other person, and the blood entered the bloodstream of another person. Myths about how HIV is transmitted. HIV is not transmitted through sharing utensils and sharing toilet seats. Please note that sweat, saliva, urine, and feces are not capable of transmitting HIV unless they are visibly contaminated with blood. HIV is not transmitted through casual contact like shaking hands, hugging, and touching. HIV is not transmitted through coughing and sneezing. Please note that HIV can be transmitted through kissing. It is extremely unlikely to transmit HIV through kissing. However, it is possible if both partners have open wounds in their mouth. The next slide shows us progress that has been made so far in reducing mortality rate. Even though the numbers are declining, a lot still needs to be done because the mortality rate is still very high. HIV and AIDS, they still remain as a global public health issue. According to the UN 2024 fact sheet, to date, they have claimed about 42.3 million lives, that is the number of deaths. In 2023 alone, there were about 39.9 million people who globally were living with HIV. 1.3 million became newly infected with HIV in 2023. 630,000 people died from HIV-related illness in 2023. And about 88.4 million people have become infected with HIV since the start of the pandemic. Please note that the situation is dire, particularly in low and middle-income countries. These are countries with weak economies when evaluated by World Bank. That includes South Africa. The next slide shows us the 2019 global map of people who are estimated to be living with HIV globally. The numbers are in millions. Note that Africa has the world's largest number of people who are living with HIV and AIDS. Southern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa in particular accounts for the majority of these. It is in maroon color. South Africa in particular has the highest number of people living with HIV. The next slide, it shows us the proportion of the population infected by HIV globally. Again, if you notice, Sub-Saharan Africa accounts for the majority of people living with HIV. The next slide, it shows us the summary of the global HIV epidemic in 2023. Guys, we can see people living with HIV in millions. That is, in 2023, there were about 39.9 million. And out of that, 1.3 million acquired HIV in 2023. And 630,000 people died from HIV. These numbers are still very high. We need to join hands and work together and defeat this epidemic. This slide, it shows us the global trends in people who are acquiring and people who are dying from HIV-related causes. Guys, we can say that a lot has been done from 2010 to 2023. There has been a big decline. However, we are still far from defeating HIV/AIDS. We are still far from meeting the targets. This brings us to the Q and the A session. Guys, you can do this at another time, just to test your understanding. Genuinely hope that you will find today's content informative and beneficial. Thank you guys for commenting and subscribing. I can see you and I appreciate your support. Please continue to show your support by commenting, liking, sharing and subscribing. And please note that it is completely free to subscribe. Let's unite together as a community in this platform. Thank you for your time. Goodbye. Lisale kakuhle, lisale hantle, .sins, lisale khabotle.